So you guys know that that 3-part documentary came out on Netflix. I forget what it's called. Reality Check with ANTM. And everyone's going insane over it because ANTM was actually one of the most, if not the most successful reality show of its time back in 2005 or 2003, whenever it first came out. I think I was in like middle/high school. And I remember watching like the first couple of seasons. After that, it just started to get a little too much. There were so many cycles because I think it wasn't 1 cycle per year. It was like 2 cycles per year. So it went at an extremely fast pace. And yeah, I kind of lost interest and couldn't really keep up after maybe the first 3 seasons. I also wasn't as necessarily obsessed as some of my friends or the other girls at my school were, but like everyone else, you know, I was glued to the screen for pretty much every episode of the first few seasons at least. And I remember always clocking from the beginning what a toxic, terrible, nice, nasty, two-faced, psychotic person Tyra was and is. I always knew that she was like a very sneaky, nasty type of mean girl persona, essentially. Not persona, like she is a mean girl. And it's crazy because it never really was a secret. I feel like it's not really this shocking thing that I've seen some people had the reaction to the ANTM documentary. They're like, oh my God, I can't believe I used to idolize Tyra. I can believe that if the person in question was significantly younger when America's Next Top Model first came out, because there's a lot of people that were like under the age of 10 when it first came out. And for some reason, back in the early 2000s or the 90s, all of us were watching TV that we were way too young and had no business to be watching. Am I right? Or am I right? So like in my case, I was already a teenager at that point. So I could, you know, I had a good read on people and I could sense bitchiness. I knew a mean girl when I saw one. I knew a covert bully when I saw one. So it wasn't like any surprise to me that all of this is coming out now. But the thing that's fascinating to me is that like now that we have this documentary, which is revisiting all of the toxic, shady, dark parts of America's Next Top Model and reeling in the aftershock, it poses this question like, how was that even possible at the time? How was it even acceptable that this kind of stuff was greenlit to be aired and then we all just ate it up or we accepted it as a norm, as a culture at the time? And it's kind of interesting to see that, I guess, the reception, you could say, of America's Next Top Model in 2026 is kind of a complete 180 from what it was when it first came out. Because when it first came out, like for some reason, we were very, I mean, not us, right? Because we were kids at the time, but all of the people in charge of culture at the time, the adults at the forefront, they were very, very complicit and guilty of pushing this really misogynistic, toxic culture. That's what sold. And that's what was popular at the time. It was kind of like a blood sport in basically ridiculing and putting female celebrities in particular through humiliation rituals, right? It was a very misogynistic, toxic, body shaming type of culture back in the late 90s and early 2000s. Now that, you know, we are seeing it through the lens of Gen Z sensibilities, where Gen Z is not letting America's Next Top Model, they're not letting Tyra Banks get away with that kind of history scotch-free. It's interesting to see how the result is still the same. America's Next Top Model documentary is still, it went viral essentially by 2026 terms, the same way that the original show went viral back in the day. And it was kind of a sensation. It was a pioneer in reality television. I think there was something crazy, like, I don't know, 100 million viewership in the first few years, peaking at over 100 million global viewers and ranking as the highest rated show on the CW from 2007 to 2010. Yeah, exactly. So it was a phenomenon back then. And in the same way, even though we're looking at it through a 180 lens from the opposite direction, from a critical point of view in the recent documentary, it's still garnering kind of the same amount of interest and obsession and just fervor. So it's kind of like crazy to see how in capitalism, these two opposite sides are really just two sides of the same coin, right? And I don't know how to feel about that, really. I don't feel terribly optimistic about it, to be honest with you. It feels like, okay, you know, on the surface, we're calling out all of the toxic, dark things that happen in America's Next Top Model. We're attempting to hold Tyra Banks and the judges, the Jays and whatnot, because all of them are complicit, right? Let's be very clear. They were all grown-ass adults at the time who were all very very, very big parts in the show. No matter how much they try to claim that they didn't really have a say in things, like, no, Tyra, your title was literally executive producer. So yeah, no matter how much Gen Z or this current audience in 2026 is claiming to hold the America's Next Top Model judges and the ringleader Tyra their feet to the fire, no matter how much they're trying to hold them accountable, it's almost like, is there any real consequence for people like Tyra Banks that's going to come out of this, though? Because the damage is already done. Tyra herself, you can tell, is obviously not remorseful. She doesn't think she did anything wrong. She basically just phoned in that appearance in the documentary because I guess not showing up in it at all would have been worse than showing up, even with the half-assed non-accountability type answers that she gave, you know, even with the fake apologies. Yeah, like the nothing burger that she gave in the documentary when they asked her the hard-hitting questions, the way that she just kind of like deflected. Even with that, I think she knew that at least if she shows up, then she has a leg to stand on. She can say that, hey, look, I showed up, you know, I faced the music, even though she actually didn't. But if she didn't appear at all, though, in the documentary, then we as the viewing public would have a case to make that, hey, you actually are the villain. So I think, like, just to give herself that very last ledge to stand on, that's the only reason that she agreed to come on the documentary. And of course, also to promote the 25th cycle of ANTM, which I cannot possibly imagine, like, who is the audience for that? What is the point of that? I mean, as far as I know, no top model has actually ever been produced from that show in the 24 cycles that it was aired back in the day anyway. So why would we need a 25th cycle? But yeah, it's all very, very interesting. Anyway, I always saw through Tyra's BS. I always knew that she was a mean girl. It was never a secret. That's the thing, right? Like, there are interviews of her straight up saying how she used to be a mean girl in high school. I don't remember the exact specifics, but like, I remember an interview where Tyra was like talking about how, yeah, like, she was the mean girl. She was basically the Regina George, leader of a clique in her high school. And she used to, they had like a committee where she would point out certain girls like, oh, you're too fat, or your outfit is not stylish enough, or like your shoes are from last season, that kind of stuff. She literally, it was like her and either her mom or some other person close to her fully just admitting that this is how she used to be.
Actually, when I was 9 years old, believe it or not, I was a bully. Because my brother used to bully me at home, so I'd go to school and get my power back. He picked on me, called me stupid, blah, blah, blah. So I went to school and I got my power back, and I was the leader of the clique.
Used to be is a stretch, because as we all see now, and as it's very apparent to the entire world, thanks to her little act that she put on in the documentary, it's very apparent that she's always been this way. She will always be this way. And I even remember just like pretty much every interview that she's ever been on. Yeah, she's always been insufferable, nose in the air, like thinks that she's better than everyone else, thinks that she's above reproach. But then at the same time, the really interesting and fascinating thing about Tyra is that while being a completely raging narcissist, she also, in the same breath, in the most contradictory, paradoxical way, she also has this savior complex, to where it's almost like a Jekyll and Hyde thing with her. There's moments where you can kind of see, you can almost see her wanting you to be a good person, like her wanting you to be a role model, a comforting, motherly like figure to these girls on America's Next Top Model, for example. And you can see, like, there are slight moments in time where she actually does seem genuine in the way that, you know, when she's talking to some of the girls, you can see little flashes of empathy, true empathy, but then quickly she'll revert back to her narcissistic, sadistic type personality. Sadistic is probably the most succinct way that I personally would pin her personality down to be. If you asked me to sum it up in as a short and as succinct of a way as possible, I would say that she's a very sadistic person, very nice, nasty, throws stones and hides her hands type of person. And this is not an excuse, but I also think it's not surprising that somebody like her managed to rise to the top of her industry at the time, amidst all of the misogynistic culture of the late 90s and the 2000s. On top of that, being thrust in one of the most misogynistic and toxic industries industries in the world, which is the world of high fashion modeling, you have to have some sort of imbalance, I feel like, chemically in your head to be able to even survive that type of an environment, let alone thrive in it. So I think I can totally see how in the time period that she came up, right? And the fact that she was like a teenager, she was still barely out of high school when she started her modeling career. The fact that she was thrust into this deeply misogynistic and toxic world, I can see how that sort of drove her to develop certain tactics to ingratiate herself with the powers that be at the time, which were usually men, right? Albeit maybe gay men, but powerful men nonetheless. So I can see how, like, it makes sense how she has developed this ability to put on a very, very, not innocent, but she puts on a very sparkly, polished, no nonsense power woman public persona, but then at the same time she manages to always like get that jab in, or get that little neg in whenever she's, for example, if she's interviewing like somebody that you can tell that she has a disdain for, you can tell that she doesn't respect the person.
Because the book isn't about sex, and it's not about hip-hop, and it's not about rappers. It's about my journey from being an abused child to being raped as a young child.
And you're saying you had sex with all the men that you just named?
But
I'm talking about your rock bottom, and you hit a rock bottom where you were homeless.
Yeah.
That interview with Tyra Banks was ridiculous. I found it sad for her. I know some things about Tyra. So when she attacked me, I remember thinking, not you. You? Okay.
Or it could just be that she wants to exploit their tragic backstory for views, as we often saw on Next Top Model. Like, you can see how she developed this really sick knack for being able to put on this act of how much she cares for and how much she has empathy for the girls, and she'll use like her facial expression and her eyes and everything to make it seem like she's this wide-eyed, I'm just trying to mentor you, I'm just trying to be your big sister. She'll do that, but then in the same breath, or in the next breath, she'll like make a really, really callous, cutting remark about the girls. In one breath, she'll talk about how, I always wanted to break down barriers in the fashion industry. I want to be the person that champions more diverse representation of models, right? Like, I want to see a wider range of body types. I want to see more models of color. I will keep fighting, and I won't stop until I'm able to make that change in the modeling industry. But then in the next breath, she'll be like, oh, but you're too fat here, and like this feature that you have is too ghetto.
Do you really think you can have a cover girl contract with a gap in your mouth?
Yeah, why not?
This is all people see. It's Easy's beautiful cover girl.
So it's very, very two-faced and very nice nasty. She'll never say anything overtly to the point where you can really call her out for it. And even if you do call her out for it, she'll just deflect, as we all saw in the documentary. But like she'll, move around, and she's like a slippery snake. Before you can call her out for kind of being a bitch, or like, wow, that was a messed up thing to say, she'll like move on to the next thing, or she'll put on her little innocent face again, like, oh my God, I care so much. Like the way that we saw with her, I think the biggest example of this is that infamous outburst that she had at Tiffany, right? Where Tiffany, she was mad at her for not groveling and crying at the fact that she was eliminated, because she wanted to see Tiffany be broken down and cry and be upset, right? Like, she gets off on that. So when she saw that Tiffany was kind of over it, and she was taking the whole elimination in stride, that's when she like lost her shit.
I have never in my life yelled at a girl like this.
So yeah, I think Tyra Banks has always been an awful person. She gives me very icky vibes as a person. And the whole fiasco with her and Naomi Campbell as well. I remember, I do think that interview that she did with Naomi, where she brought her onto the Tyra show without a studio audience and basically cornered her and like tried to get her to own up to bullying her when they were both modeling in Milan or Europe or wherever. And like, she basically just cornered Naomi for an entire hour and tried to make her look as bad as possible and make herself look like the victim. And I'm not saying that Naomi was innocent in the matter. I don't think Naomi is a good person either, especially nowadays after we've seen what's been going down in the e-files in particular. But let's just try to focus on, I guess the interactions between Tyra and Naomi. So I will hand it to Tyra. That interview, I do think, has to go down as one of the top 10 clips of media out there in my lifetime, at least. Everything about it is is just so diabolical. I can't even. I hesitate to say this. Like, I don't want to overstep my bounds. Like, I'm not Black, obviously, so I don't want to, you know, speak too much on something that I don't have intimate knowledge of. But yeah, I'm probably gonna get canceled. So anyway, let me just go ahead and say it. If you are Black or if you're part of that community, please feel free to correct me or add any nuance if you will. But I know that I'm right. I'm 99% certain that this is exactly the way that I'm understanding Tyra Banks's dynamic with Naomi Campbell and her mentality when it comes to a Naomi Campbell type. I'm 99% certain I understand the psychology of Tyra Banks. The reason that I want to talk about this is because, like, okay, like, I'm not Black or part of that community, but I am Asian. I'm also part of another community which also has a lot of colorism. The Asian diaspora also has like a lot of featureism and colorism and that kind of stuff going on in it. So I understand like a version of that. I may not understand exactly what goes on in the Black community, but there are parallels for sure. And so that's why I feel like I pretty much have Tyra Banks completely clocked when it comes to her whole obsession with Naomi Campbell. In a nutshell, you can correct me and come for me if you think I'm wrong. I don't mean any disrespect or anything, okay? You guys know that. So first of all, I think that Tyra Banks is kind of like, dare I say, an Oreo type, you know, how they say Black on the outside, white on the inside. We have a similar term in the Asian community. It's called banana, or wait, no. Because like yellow on the outside and white on the inside. We have a term for like Asian people who try to be white or they try to appeal to Caucasian people. I feel like banana is not the term. Twinkie. Oh my goodness. I haven't heard that term in over a decade, but I remember when I was growing up, they used to have the term Twinkie for Asian people that were like Asian on the outside, but they thought they were white or they wanted to be white. They aspired to whiteness on the inside. I feel like Tyra Banks is kind of like, and I'm not saying she aspires to be white, but I feel like she comes from Inglewood, California, right? That's her hometown. So isn't that not, correct me if I'm wrong, but is that not like a very predominantly white suburban type of neighborhood? I mean, just California in general, that's not really the same as like the other, what you would necessarily think of when you think Black culture, right? When you think of Black culture in America, it's more so like, I don't know, Atlanta, Georgia, or New Orleans, like those types of places, or like even Queens, New York, that type of place. But California, that's pretty white, is it not? Like suburban white valley girl type. So that's why it makes sense now thinking back on this, because I'm trying to refresh my memory as well. I haven't thought about Tyra Banks in, again, the better part of a decade, but I'm not denying that she loves her Black identity and heritage and whatnot, but she's always given the impression that like she's not really, whenever she tries to act more like down with the girls, it always comes off as like, okay, a Black girl from a white suburban neighborhood trying to act more hood, if that makes sense. And so anyway, that doesn't really relate to what I'm trying to say regarding her thoughts towards Naomi Campbell, but that was just one thing that I wanted to add, because like she has recently started this melted ice cream brand thing in Australia, of all places. I think that's where she lives now. And then she has created this alter ego character to sell that ice cream. So it's called like hot ice cream, but it's essentially a hot melted smoothie, I guess, like a melted ice cream, but she's calling it hot ice cream. And then she's trying to make it this new thing. She's trying to make fetch happen. But yeah, she created this alter ego, Santa Smize, because you know, Smize was her whole thing too, right? Like smiling with your eyes, except when she does it, she kind of looks psychotic because she is. But yeah, Santa Smize, which is a Christmas time alter ego and arch nemesis to promote her viral hot ice cream venture. So Santa Smize, like it's kind of giving, I don't know, like caricature, right? Because she uses a lot of like AAVE, but it's very forced, and it's almost like, it's weird because you would expect that it sounds natural coming from her because she is Black, but then it almost sounds like she is cosplaying or imitating like an urban Black girl.
There's the Sundays, let me hear you, baby. Miss Tyra Banks, she's out there making some hot ice cream. She's doing all them videos saying, I think I'm going crazy. Flip your hair even if it ain't there. We're going to have a situation, and I'm going to let y'all know, because I have beef. Not chicken, not pork, not soy, not impossible meat, but beef with Mr. Santa Claus. He putting it on the thing. He putting a little bit of cookie. He putting a little bit of that milk. He mixing it up. And it's saying, woo, they flying. Make it rain, dear. Make it rain, dear.
regarding her beef with Naomi Campbell, I do not doubt that Naomi Campbell was probably a bitch. Maybe she did actually legitimately treat Tyra badly, or we'll never know what was the truth and what was not. But let's just assume, let's go with the idea that everything that Tyra Banks accused Naomi Campbell of when she brought her on her talk show. Let's assume it was true, right? So for example, there was one time where apparently it was a Giorgio Armani fashion show. Oh, it was in Italy, right? So like there was a photographer there, and then he kind of called for Tyra to come out to talk to him. Like he was like, hey, can you just come out? As Tyra was getting ready to walk down the runway, and he told her that, I'm sorry to inform you, but you're not going to be walking in the Armani show anymore. Like they pulled you out. And then when she asked why, apparently, according to Tyra, so this could have just been her delusion, but according to Tyra, he made a head signal over towards Naomi to imply that Naomi is the one that got her kicked out of the shows.
He says, I have to cancel you from the fashion show.
Right.
And I was like,
and you instantly thought that was because of me?
No, I didn't. Gave me a look and kind of did like that toward you.
So then when Tyra confronted Naomi about this, she was like, okay, just so you know, I don't have that kind of pull. I'm just a model too, like yourself. So, you know, whatever. I understand that maybe you got that idea planted in your head by the photographer or whoever, but just so you know, like Armani was notorious for doing that. Like he would always switch out girls at the last minute, and you're not alone. Kate Moss had the same thing happen to her. So just so you know, that was not me, and it could not possibly be me, right? Because I was a model. I'm not in charge of casting, right? So I don't have a say in whether or not another model gets to walk down the runway, no matter how senior I am compared to how junior you were at the time. This is Naomi explaining to Tyra. So like whatever the truth of that situation was, and it was funny because like Naomi Campbell was like, oh, so by the way, do you know Johnny Versace? Like, have you ever known him on a personal basis? And Tyra was like, no. And Naomi was like, yeah, okay, well, I did. He was like my good friend. So I'm going to tell you right now, that was just his way of doing business, right? It happened a lot on his shows where he would just pull certain girls out last minute. It's nothing personal, and it's not about you necessarily. That was just the Johnny Versace way.
Okay.
What, do you ever know Johnny Versace?
No.
Okay, so anyone
just
that
only
knows
knew him
him
from
knows
work.
you. I could never do that. But just so you know, you're not alone. Kate Moss was cancelled after doing a fitting in a rehearsal.
Yes. No.
So
I've been canceled as a model a lot. No, he's notorious. I knew he was notorious for canceling at the last minute. So that's not what I'm saying.
Nothing to do with me.
This is not my opinion. This is something that somebody did a head nod.
Said,
yes.
yeah.
And again, please correct me if you are actually from this community. And if you feel like I've gotten it wrong, please correct me. I'm not trying to offend anyone. I'm just trying to tell you what I see and what I perceive. And also as a person who comes from a different community who has like much of the same parallel issues. The Asian diaspora also has a lot of issues with colorism and whatnot. So I honestly think that Tyra Banks, before she met Naomi, I do think that she obviously probably really looked up to and idolized Naomi because, like, you know, at the time, Naomi was the biggest supermodel in the world. And I'm sure as a little Black girl, it was really, really amazing and important to her to see a fellow Black woman make it to such heights in the elite modeling and fashion world, right? But I think by the time that Tyra herself was able to break into the modeling industry, when she actually was able to make it onto kind of some of the same shoots and same jobs as Naomi, to the point where she actually was able to collaborate side by side. Like she was able to participate in some photo shoots side by side with Naomi at one point, right? Which means that, like, I think in Tyra's mind, she felt like, okay, this is it. I've made it. And now I should be able to start past Naomi Campbell because I am lighter skinned than Naomi and I have more, I don't know, Eurocentric features. I'm talking about Tyra in comparison to Naomi Campbell, right? So I think in Tyra's twisted mind, I don't even think that this had to be like a conscious thing. It was probably a subconscious thing. But I think in Tyra's mind, she felt that it's not necessarily that she wanted to take away Naomi Campbell's supermodel title from her, but I think she wanted to be seen as like the next Naomi Campbell, but perhaps even a better version of her, because like girls like Tyra, I feel like maybe she could not fathom the fact that a darker skin model could be so much more like elite, considered so much more high fashion and more elite than her. Right? Like, I think Tyra thought that, hey, but like, I'm the preferred skin tone in my community, right? The same thing happens in the Asian communities. I think Tyra thought that, okay, surely now that I've made it, you know, now that I've gotten my foot in through the high fashion modeling world, surely now I'm going to be the top Black supermodel because I'm the one with lighter skin. I'm the one with more Eurocentric features. You know, by Eurocentric standards, which is what the fashion world operated on at the time, largely, I am considered prettier even than Naomi, even though it's obvious to everyone with eyeballs that Naomi Campbell is drop dead gorgeous. But I think in Tyra's mind, she felt like this is the obvious hierarchy that should be upheld though, right? Because like no matter how gorgeous Naomi is, she is still darker complexion than me. So like I should be the one to rise to the top now that I've gotten my foot in the door. And so when that didn't happen, right, because like I said, Tyra Banks herself, she never really garnered the title of supermodel. That title was a very specific honor that only went to a select few women, right? Naomi Campbell, Christy Turlington, Linda Evangelista, I don't know, but I think it was only a handful. I don't think it was even more than like 10 models from that time period that you could even consider to be a supermodel. Those were the models that the term itself was invented for. And Tyra Banks, no shade, no tea to her, but she was never considered as part of that category. So I think like that compounded with the fact that maybe, okay, whether or not she was like malicious or whether she just wasn't really bothered about Tyra, it was probably more leaning towards the latter. The fact that Naomi didn't really have any strong feelings toward Tyra, I think in her mind, Tyra could not fathom Naomi Campbell not embracing her with open arms and taking her under her wing, because she's like, wait, but what do you mean? Like, I'm literally, the better version of you. I'm the lighter skinned, more European looking one. I have green eyes, right? That's another thing that, like I said, it was all over every single piece of media that Tyra Banks appeared in. You could see her narcissistic, sadistic, two-faced persona shining through in pretty much every single clip that she's ever been on TV, which is why it's kind of crazy, like, but not really, because we know that the world rewards horrible people. But it's just kind of crazy because it's been right in front of everyone's eyes the whole time, and only now are we starting to critique it because Gen Z is making a fuss. So this is again why I will always ride at dawn for Gen Z. Even though I'm a millennial, I do feel like it's kind of divided, right? In my generation, there's the ones that kind of side with Gen Z, and there's the other ones that separate themselves, like, oh, I really don't understand why Gen Z is so soft, or their slang is weird. There's like that type of millennial, but then there's the other half, which includes me, that really, for the most part, every generation has its critiques of one another, but for the most part, like, I like whatever Gen Z's on, and I want them to continue to pioneer better change and more compassion and whatnot, and more accountability in society at large. But anyway, I'm not to get too much off track. So yeah, I think that's pretty much in a nutshell the psychology of Tyra Banks when it comes to Naomi Campbell, and you can see it played out furthermore by the fact that every single darker skinned model, or like, yeah, every single darker skinned Black girl that she came across on America's Next Top Model, and also probably on her talk show as well, she always had like such a chip on her shoulder when she dealt with them, and she always treated them very horribly. So I'm trying to remember certain instances, but like, for example, Tiffany, right? Tiffany was like a darker skinned model that looked more, if you were to compare her to between the two, Tiffany looked more, I would say she favored more Naomi Campbell than she did Tyra Banks, right? Both of her features and her skin tone. So the fact that Tiffany was not like begging and groveling at her feet, because that's how Tyra sees models that are darker than her, I think. Like, in her head, she thinks of it like, okay, yes, I do want there to be more Black models. I do want to help them in their career, but only if they worship me, right? Because they should worship me as like the superior lighter skinned model. I think this is honestly her psychology. So that's why she went off the rails when Tiffany dared to like not react in a totally devastated way that Tyra wanted her. Because like, if you think about it, what kind of a sick person, why would you want somebody to be devastated? Wouldn't you be more relieved that Tiffany is actually going to be okay? Like, yeah, okay, she's upset, she's disappointed that she was eliminated, but she's showing that, look, she can take it in stride. She's a big girl and she's not going to just cry and crash out on national television, right? Like, a normal person would feel relieved that, oh, okay, so she's going to be fine. But Tyra, what kind of a person actually wants her to do the opposite? A sadistic person, a sadist, which is what Tyra Banks is. So who else? There were other examples, but I can't remember because I didn't watch that many of the cycles, to be honest with you. But yeah, like, pretty much every single, and like, this is a theory that I think other people have talked about. Other, actual Black content creators have talked about in depth as well. So please feel free to go watch their videos. I'm sure they can go more in depth about it than I can. But there have been theories that I fully agree with, that basically every single darker skin model that Tyra Banks comes across, she kind of uses that girl as a stand-in for Naomi. Like, the way that she felt she was slighted and bullied and wronged by Naomi, she'll turn around and kind of she'll use that darker skinned model as almost like an effigy doll, or I don't know how to explain it, like a stand-in for Naomi Campbell, and she will hurl all of her abuse, whether overt or covert, towards that girl and put that girl through humiliation rituals, put her through the ringer and get some sadistic emotional payoff from it, because in her mind it's like a part of her feels like she's getting back at Naomi Campbell. It's a very, very sick, very twisted, very fascinating psychology. But yeah, that's pretty much Tyra Banks' obsession with Naomi Campbell in a nutshell. And it's why she's obsessed with her and can't let her go, from her own mouth, and I think from her acquaintances' mouths as well, in whatever TV program that they were talking about this. I forget exactly what, but they explicitly were talking about how, Tyra Banks used to be a mean girl, and she would gather around with her clique and kind of like vote girls in or out of the group. She was doing this already in middle school, high school. So it seems like she was always in the bully role. And like, for some reason, just because Naomi Campbell was minding her business and not really giving her the time of day once she made it to Milan, because Naomi Campbell was there to do a job and she wasn't concerned about Tyra. But since Tyra thinks that the world revolves around her and that there's no way that Naomi Campbell wouldn't welcome her with open arms, because she's like the lighter, more Eurocentric beauty version of her, like in Tyra's mind, she felt like, okay, like she had to twist it somehow to make herself the victim, essentially, by all means necessary. Anyway, so that's my take on Tyra and her obsession with Naomi Campbell. What else? Do I think that Tyra Banks is going to suffer any real blowback from this? No, because again, like I said, in this current attention economy that we live in, only attention gets rewarded. So the outrage that's happening, the attempts to hold Tyra Banks accountable, I don't think anything solid is gonna come from it. I don't think Tyra Banks is really cancelable at this point, largely because, like I said before, she just clearly doesn't care. It's so clear she's always been just out for herself. She's only ever cared about herself. I mean, even just that one anecdote alone about her never visiting Miss J in the hospital, not even once after he suffered that stroke, was left unable to walk or talk for I don't know how long, several years it seems. But it seems that recently he has at least regained the ability to talk and walk. So good for him. But yeah, the fact that Tyra Banks never visited him even once, the fact that she completely went cold and stopped talking to Jay Manuel the moment that he expressed to her his decision or his wishes to leave the show, the ability that she has to just turn cold on people in a second is giving very, very sociopath. It's giving very like devoid of any human emotion or empathy. It's given very mean girl, only looking out for herself. Okay, so I will give her a little bit of credit. I will say a lot of the things that she does are actually good tactics, I think, when it comes to protecting yourself in interactions with men. Take that for what you will. So like, for example, the ability, like when Jay Manuel came to her in what he thought was good faith and expressed to her colleague to colleague that, hey, because Jay Manuel said that, they always had a pact that whatever happened or whatever issues that they were having, they would come to each other first without going to the network, right? So Jay Manuel, wanting to make good on that promise, decided to tell Tyra Banks personally through a personal email that he was thinking about leaving the show before putting in any sort of official resignation letter or request to the network. But instead of, keeping up her good faith part of the bargain, Tyra just instantly discarded him. She's a user and discarder, right? She'll use people for as long as she can, but the moment that they turn on her, the moment that she perceives that they are daring to challenge her authority or go against her authority and her wishes, she'll throw you away immediately. So not the best way to operate as a professional, but could be a good way to operate when it comes to men, right? In fact, I would encourage most girls to do that when it comes to men. Like if they're no longer useful to you, or if they do the slightest thing that you don't like or that pisses you off, you should discard them, or at least make a show of discarding them so that they can win you back by paying the re-entry fee. And then also, I heard from a lot of people, including Trisha Paytas, who was on the Tyra Banks show once. Do you guys remember that? that blast from the past. I think she went on as the fastest reader, or one of the fastest readers. Like, she was able to read a page out of a book at warp speed. It was actually very impressive, I will say. Like, wow, I almost forgot that that was one of the earliest appearances that Trisha Paytas ever made. I think that was before she even had a full-blown YouTube career, but yeah, I remember she went on the Tyra Banks show, and then years later probably, but I don't remember the timeline, but Trisha Paytas also made a video on her own YouTube channel detailing her experience at the Tyra Banks show, and she said that her experience seems to line up with a lot of other people's anecdotes of their own interactions with Tyra. She basically said that Tyra was like, you know, very warm, like in your face, personable when she was in host interviewer mode, but the moment that the cameras would turn off for a break, or if they were to cut to commercial break, she would literally just like stare straight ahead and not make eye contact with any of the guests that were on the show. And she would just like not acknowledge you, and she would just like stare ahead like a robot. Again, I feel like that's like unnecessary if you're in a work environment, especially if you're kind of like a media personality and your whole selling point or your whole persona is based off of being, you know, this personable, social kind of person. Like, if your job is predicated on you interacting with other people and having good banter with people, that's kind of overkill, right? To just turn it all off when the cameras are off and ignore, just like completely do a 180 and ignore everyone that is on your stage that you invited them to. But then at the same time, I'm like, you know what? That is kind of a good ability to have when it comes to, again, dealing with men, right? Like, especially if you go to certain areas or countries where the men tend to be more aggressive or overt in their ogling of women, especially if you stand out as a foreign woman, like if you look different from their local women. Some countries, the men will be like very aggressive and not shy about staring at you. They don't really care about making you uncomfortable. So I'm thinking of, in particular, Egypt. When I was visiting Egypt, I got a lot of stares everywhere I went. And like, I didn't mind because, you know, I never felt unsafe. I was with the tour group the whole time. And to be honest, I was in my serial dating phase. Like, I was just chatting up and practicing using my feminine wiles on pretty much each and every guy that was within a reasonable age range that I came across. Anyone that looked remotely decent, and as long as they were not like a total creep, I was eating up all of the flirtation, right? And I was trying to, like, it was a game to me to see how much I could get from any guy that I met, that I came across. But yeah, like, I remember when I was in Egypt, they were just very, very overt about it. Like, they had no shame. Even the women too. Like, I remember even just walking through customs at one of the airports, one of the female security guards was kind of beckoning over to her male colleague as I was walking through the, what's it called? Like the pat down security thing. Oh my God, what is it called? The body scan pat down thing, right? Like, you walk through the little door frame and then they'll pat you down if there was metal detected on your body or whatever. So I guess they detected something on me. So the female guard had to walk up to me to pat me down. And she was like Muslim, so she was all covered. But then she was talking to her male guard that was next to her. And she was like, hey, Mohammed or whoever, come here. Don't you want to see a beautiful Chinese woman or a beautiful Asian woman? And so that was, but like, I didn't feel sexually harassed or anything. If it was another person, maybe they would have been uncomfortable with it. But since it's me, and since it was the female guard patting me down, and she also ate down as well. She was a total baddie. So I was like, what are you talking about? Look at yourself. So we had like kind of a nice exchange. But yeah, like that kind of stuff happened pretty much on a daily basis when I was visiting in Egypt. So in my case, I didn't feel in danger and I never felt unsafe because I was with the tour group. But if I was ever in a situation where I felt unsafe, or I just felt like, yeah, like if I didn't have the covering of a group or another man or something with me, then I think that's a very good skill to have in your arsenal, to be able to like completely just look ahead and not smile, not acknowledge the stares of all the men or whatever around you. I say all this to say that like there are lessons that I've taken from Tyra, whether I like to admit it or not, even though I don't like her as a person. I think she's not a good person at the end of the day, because I think she just doesn't have compassion for other people, no matter how much she can act from time to time that she does. At the end of the day, I think it's very clear that she is only really out out for herself. She does not care who is collateral. I don't think I don't think she ever starts out necessarily looking for a target, but inevitably through her interactions with like the contestants from ANTM, for example, inevitably there will be one or two girls that stand out every cycle who just hit a certain trigger in her, whether they remind her of Naomi Campbell or whether she has a certain script for them in her mind, and if they go against it, she feels slighted. She feels like it's a personal attack on her or a personal insult to her, even though that girl or that person would never have any way of knowing that Tyra Banks expected her to do something. But then, yeah, Tyra Banks just takes people's exercise of their own free will. If it doesn't align with her narrative that she has in her head of this particular person, then she takes it as like a personal affront. So that's just, that's the kind of person that she is. She's always been that way, and I think she always will be. I don't think that, like at this point with that kind of person, I don't think it's a matter of making them feel bad or making them ever want to atone for their mistakes in some kind of way, because you can't shame the shameless, right? She already doesn't feel bad. She already doesn't care. And even if you were to get her to acquiesce or admit that, yeah, I was kind of being a shitty person in that moment, she still doesn't care, right? Like she's like, yeah, so what? I was shitty. She told that one model, oh my God, I forgot her name, not Ebony, the other one, who was basically, she found it very hard to find modeling work after ANTM, which was kind of the case for most of the girls. But at least I think in some of the later seasons, some of the girls did manage to get a couple of jobs. But anyway, there was that one girl in particular that Tyra told her years later that she knew that by that girl being on the show, by the fact that she appeared on ANTM, Tyra knew that automatically closed certain doors in the fashion industry to her. But she said that even with that knowledge, she never stepped in to help that girl, and she never told her about it. Like she never stepped up to her to have an honest conversation, which is a crazy thing to admit to someone. But again, it just shows you that this is who she's been all along. This is her MO. She doesn't care about other people. She only cares about herself. Tyra looks out for number one, which is herself, which again, in certain contexts, right, in certain situations, that's absolutely a good trait to have. That's absolutely the way that you want to operate when it comes to dealing with men and, employers, right? But the fact that, like, for Tyra, she takes no prisoners. That's just the way that she operates, regardless of who you are. It doesn't matter if you are like Miss J, who taught her to walk ever since she was 15 years old. It doesn't matter if you're, an up-and-coming girl, a young aspiring Black girl model that appeared on ANTM that she claimed to take under her wing as her mentor. It doesn't matter if you are even Naomi Campbell, her own self-proclaimed idol. Tyra, one thing you could say about her is that she treats everyone with equal amounts of, I'm blanking right now, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, everyone can get it from Tyra, right? She doesn't discriminate when it comes to dishing out her abuse, I'll say, to everyone around her, and she doesn't discriminate when it comes to discarding people once they are of no more use to her. So that's Tyra Banks in a nutshell. Let's move to the next topic, because I'm tired of talking about her, because again, I think there's nothing else to add. And at this point, is she really cancelable? I mean, I think she borderline falls into the category of people that, for some reason, no matter how they've proven to be a horrible person over and over again, they just remain uncancelable, because the fact that they themselves just don't give a shit, it's almost like it forms a force field around them, that whatever criticism the public tries to levy against them, or whatever accountability that the Gen Z TikTokers are trying to hold her to, it's never going to amount to anything. Because what do you want to happen? Like, what can you accomplish by shaming Tyra Banks at this point? You can't shame the shameless. So what do you want to happen? Like, can you put her in jail? No. All the legal things, I'm sure she has her ass covered. She's a very smart woman, so I'm sure she's lawyered up. I'm sure she's made it so that it's impossible for anyone to sue her or accuse her of defamation, anything. So what could you possibly do to make her pay for what she did on America's Next Top Model? The only thing that you could do is to take the only thing that we could possibly do as a collective, as the public, to give her some form of her just desserts is by taking our attention completely and utterly away from her, right? But even that's not going to happen, because, people are are absolutely gonna tune into cycle 25 of ANTM. They want to know the tea, right? Even though Tyra is a horrible person, the allure of the spectacle of the whole thing is just too strong for, I guess, the attention span of the average person these days. So you gotta hand it to her. She is a master marketer. She's a master curator, like succubus of public attention. She's a master at sucking and drawing attention towards her by any means necessary. Yeah, fascinating individual. Awful, awful person. Naomi Campbell is awful in a different way, but we're not going to get into her today.